Thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar on P3 Training Basic to Advanced presented by Erin Vengrow and Brandon Robbins. My name is Laura Lawrence and I'm the Global Marketing Director at Harman. I wanted to go over just a few things before we get started. Everyone on the call is muted to keep down noise levels during the webinar. However, there is a chat function where you can submit your questions to the presenters and we'll try to answer as many as possible. The webinar will also be recorded and the link will be made available a few days after this presentation. We do have a number of other webinars taking place over the next few months for audio, lighting, video, and control, and we'd like to encourage you to take a look at the different webinars in our Learning Session Workshop series on pro.harman.com, as well as visiting Harman Professional University to see our many on-demand and certification courses that are available to you always for free. And now I'd like to introduce you to my colleagues, Erin Vengrow and Brandon Robbins, the presenters for today's webinar. Erin is a former touring lighting and video technician who has been with Martin Professional for 3 years. And Brandon started as an intern at Martin Professional more than 15 years ago. And after spending 11 years in the repair department, he now works in product and application support. And now I'll pass the mic over to you, Erin.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm going to share my desktop here. And we're going to get going with P3. So the first thing I kind of want to go over is intro to P3. What is P3? P3 describes both the hardware and the software side of this control solution. On the hardware side of things, we have 3 models. There's the 50 and the 150, which up top here share the same 1U 19-inch wide form factor. They have DVI in, spots for local UI, and then Ethernet in and a P3 out that you can use to stream to your devices, as well as 5-pin DMX. The P350 can control up to 50,000 pixels, and the P3 can control up to 500,000 pixels. Down below here, we have the P3 300, which is a 2U solution. That gives you, as well as DVI in, you can also have 2 HD SDI inputs. You can also have a Genlock input as well if you wish. It also gives you more outputs. You can control up to 2 million pixels with the P3 300, as well, of course, as the Ethernet in and local management ports as well. So today for this presentation, I'm going to be using the PC version of P3. And so those of you who have downloaded P3 PC to follow along, you're likely using version 5.1. Brandon and I are going to be using version 5.2 in beta mode, which should be coming out in a few weeks' time. So you may see a couple of things on there that you don't see there, but I will not be going over some of those things. They'll just look a little different. So when you first boot up P3 PC, you're going to be presented with this box here. And what this is because P3 PC can run on any Windows-based computer, you're going to have to give it a little bit of information as far as what hardware it's going to be looking at when it boots up. So for the P3 out, I'm going to be using my onboard NIC, which is this Intel thing here. If I wanted to have ArtNet in, let's say that I was on a desktop computer or I had a USB to gigabit dongle, I would tell it, to pick one of the NICs down here, and from there you could select where you're getting your ArtNet in from a lighting console, something like that. If you wanted to use thermal throttling, in which case this was, say, an architectural installation, and you had multiple P3 PC installations, and for whatever reason, say, one part of it gets hot in the afternoon, automatically P3 will dim down fixtures as they get too hot, but if you want to have the entire installation dim down at the same rate as the one that's overheating, you would select the NIC that you want to use here to communicate with other parts of the P3 installation so that you have a uniform image. So I'm going to hit OK here to select that. And now it's going to say, okay, do you want to load the previous one you had within 10 seconds? Do you want to browse for an existing one? Or do you want to create a new one? I'm going to create a new one, and I'm going to call this presentation. And then it's going to ask me, well, what mode do I want to run it in? There's two modes. You can have one-to-one, which means that every single pixel that comes in mapped from the input, it's mapped to one pixel on a fixture. That means a couple different things, and we'll show you. For instance, if you have two septrons that are both 1 meter septron, but one is a 10 mil product pixel pitch, and the other is a 20 mil pixel pitch, mapped on P3 at one-to-one, those two fixtures will actually show up as different sizes because they have the 20 mil pixel pitch product has fewer pixels. If you go with real world, because both fixtures are 1 meter in the real world, they will show up as the same size within P3. So for this part, I'm going to select real world. And then it's going to ask you what pixel pitch do you want to work with. I'm going to select 10 millimeter. And you can also further screen that down to a specific product if you're working with just one product if you wish. And then it's going to ask you what units do you want to use for measurement. I tend to always think of things in pixels, but let's say that, again, you are having an architectural or you just wanted to use meters and feet. You can select that if you wish, and it'll change all the units of measurement to inches, feet, or centimeters. And then you can also say, well, what size of the workspace do you want it to be? The default is full HD resolution because that's the maximum that we can get with DVI at 60 frames per second. But you can also set that smaller if you wish. So next, I'm going to hit finish. All right. And now, so you're presented with a screen here. Let's maximize this. And a lot of information at once that you get here. So you're going to see this gray box here, and this is the 1920 by 1080 area workspace. The grayed out area here is inactive workspace right now because of our video input settings. And then this white box here is our active workspace. So any fixtures that we put here are going to have content mapped to them just from the get-go. Down here, you may see a few things here as well. You're always going to see this global screen settings thing, and this is just that you can globally set the brightness that you want for all of your connected fixtures. You can select which gamma curve you want, and then you can also edit them if you wish. You can also select the global color temperature as well if you want. Now, I actually have some fixtures connected to my PC right now, and for any P3 product, if you turn it on and load it up while there's fixtures connected and everything is powered, of course, it'll automatically discover those fixtures down here. Wow. When you have fixtures that are automatically discovered, you can drag them right onto the workspace if you wish. And you'll notice up here, because that fixture is detected and it's addressed, that fixture will now show up as green. Also, when you select a fixture, you'll see that there are more options for that fixture down here. You can give that fixture a number. The number is independent of any other control system as well, which we'll get more into later. But it can be any numbering system that you want. Starting at 1, you could start at 1,000. It doesn't really matter. It'll give you the serial number of the fixture. It'll give you the firmware version of the fixture, temperature, of course, MAC address, and all that information is over here. You can put the fixture into a test pattern if you wish. You can also select the test pattern intensity. You can put what mode you want it to be in calibrated mode. As well as adjusting for some other options down here as well, such as high refresh rate or and compensation for some various lenses that you can get put on. It'll also tell you to over here if you've got fixtures connected on the other end of it. So that fixture that I selected is the last one in my chain. If I select this one over here, it'll tell you that it's connected at both in, of course, and as well as out. Over here, these buttons are useful if you have just booted up installation and supposedly everything is on and powered. You can select light all, and right now all the fixtures that I have connected here, even though I don't have anything mapped, are running through an RGB test pattern sequence. If I was on site somewhere and I was kind of building a project with fixtures that were already there, mapped or installed, I could select highlight so that I could see which fixture it was that I was selecting. And you can also hit renumber as well if you want to renumber all of the fixtures, but I'm not going to do that right now. So up here, you can have this drop down if you want to just select certain fixtures. I'm going to leave this on Septron since that's the only thing that I have selected, but of course you can always just go back to all fixtures if you wish. Over here you can select the next number. So let's say, for instance, you were putting on 2 different kinds of fixtures and you wanted one to have a 100 numbering scheme and you wanted the other ones to have a 1000 numbering scheme. You could easily jump to the next number there. And this button over here is what allows you to place multiple fixtures without having to constantly select another fixture. So if I leave that on and I select my Septron 10-100, I can just kind of keep clicking and plopping them down and so forth. And then I can just turn that off. And then if I want to do this, it'll automatically unselect it. So then I'm free to do anything else. A lot of this is, you might find, is kind of intuitive as well. There are certain commands that are kind of standard across multiple programs. For instance, if I want to select all my fixtures, I can just hit Control-A, and I've selected all my fixtures. If I want to hit delete, I just hit delete, and all my fixtures are gone. But let's say that I didn't want to do that, I made a mistake. You can either hit this undo button up here, or you can always, of course, hit Control-Z, and then everything is back the way it was. The same thing works if you are used to some other Windows schemes. You can hold down Control and just run your zoom wheel and zoom in. You can also do the same thing with these magnifying glasses up here. And then if you want to zoom back to the default view, you can just press that 0. If you want to move the project around a little bit in your view space, you just select hand and move it around. Keep in mind when you do that, you can't select anything else. So sometimes we get these calls saying, oh, my installation is not working, I can't select anything. It's just that up there. While you also have the fixture selected, you can use your arrow keys to move the project around if you want. And then also, this is a setting that you can turn on and off, but you can also have them just right next to each other as well. Got someone's not muted. It's funny.
Okay.
Let's see. So we're going to delete these fixtures because these aren't real fixtures, and I'm going to select these fixtures here, and I'm going to drag them on. And they've kind of all dragged on there like that, in that way. I'm going to spread them out a little bit. So one of the things that you can do, oh, I got ahead of myself a little bit. Let's do this. Let's say that for whatever reason, I was building these in my remote office somewhere, and I knew what equipment they were going to have, but we haven't, obviously I'm not plugged into it. So one of the things that we can do is we can build that and then address the fixtures later. So I'm going to select my next fixture here to be 1. And now I already know what equipment I've got, so I'm going to select one of these Septrons, and I'm going to select, we've got a 132, and I've got a 1x8. I've also got a subtron 20. So one of the things that we're going to go through here is some of the wizards. So in this particular instance, we're going to use what's called the quick addressing tool. So this little box down here you'll see just kind of popped up. And what the quick addressing tool does is that if you've got a lot of fixtures and you want to address them all very quickly rather than having to go through and select them one by one, what the P3 will do is it'll send a signal to every power port and bus device that's connected within the P3 ecosystem. And it'll go in order as well. So for instance, I've got 4 different subtrons here, all daisy chained together on my chain. And the first one here that's connected is white, while the rest have their beginning and end pixels as blue. So it's going to say, okay, well, which one is going to be this first one here? And I know that this one here is the first one. So I'm going to select this one as it's lit. And you can see that the fixture that on my end is white is yellow on the screen because that's the one that's going to ask you to select. So I'm going to click that one because, yes, that is that fixture. And next. And now that is my, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, 10100. That did not go the way that it was supposed to. Let's do that again. And when I run it again, it's going to say, okay, well, you've got some fixtures that are already configured because it's detected fixtures that have the same address that are connected to my power port, and so it's going to ask me, do I want to unconfigure those or do I want to skip over them? I'm going to click yes. I'm going to unconfigure them, and it's going to confirm. Do you really want to do this? And I'm going to hit S to continue. And now again, so now my first one is correctly lit. So I'm going to hit that one. And now it's going to go to this one. Yep. And then it's going to go to this one. So as I pick the ones that are white, I pick the fixture on my layout. And then I hit that one. And now it says finished addressing all devices, no more devices were found. And that's true because I don't have any unconfigured devices down here. You'll also notice that as these fixtures were correctly addressed and then laid out on the layout, is that they went from an orange dot to a green dot over here to say this fixture that's supposed to be here is here and I can detect it. You'll also notice up here that this dot is green. If you ever have this dot is orange, it means that there are fixtures that are laid out or that are discovered that are not connected in some way. It means that there's something that's missing. It's not necessarily, it may be intentional, but usually, you know, if we get a call saying, hey, I've got an issue going on with my P3, we'll kind of ask, you know, what is that dot green? Now that I've got some fixtures laid out, one of the things that I can do is I can send it some test patterns. So I can select a number of test patterns here. I'm just going to put them into moving gradient, and then I can hit go, and it'll say, the fixtures that are connected right now are going through that test sequence. And also, this is something that's going to be coming out in version 5.2, but now you'll also be able to see which test pattern is running on those fixtures as well. Back to blank. Let's do another wizard. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit for this one. And I'm going to do the layout wizard. So it's going to ask me, do I want to do a layout of discovered devices or do I want to do a library of devices? I'm going to do a library. and it's going to ask me what fixtures do I want. I'm going to select Septron. I'm going to hit next. You can select which version of Septron if you wish. And it's going to ask me if I want to add them to a new group. Brandon's going to go into a little bit more depth about groups to begin with, but I'm going to hit no. And it's going to ask me what size do I want this layout to be. I'm going to have it be 10. I'm going to have my height be 2. And then I'm going to hit next. It's going to ask me which way do I want them daisy chained. Are they going to be daisy chained from the top down, left to right, or vertical from the top down? It's going to ask me what corner it's going to start at. And it's also going to ask me, which, is there going to be multiple daisy chains? This is if you're using a P3 500, which only has one output, and let's say that you're using a switch for efficient cabling, or if you're using a 300 that has multiple outputs, you'll also want to select that, and then you can say, well, how many columns per daisy chain as well. It's just telling the software how you have it cabled. And then you say, okay, this is the number of columns that I have in my daisy chain, and of course the starting number. So I'm going to hit finish. And now all the way up here, move this around a little bit. I'm going to zoom in. And you can see that it's set, it's laid out all of my Septrons, but I don't have to, click and drag, let's say 100 or 500, however many Septrons you might have in your installation or project. Can save you some of that tediousness. I'm going to select all of these. I'm going to hit delete. One of the other things that you can do as well, if you're working on just getting something set up before you get on site, is let's say that you have 5 over here. Or 5. If let's say that I'm always going to have them in groups of 5, you can copy and paste, Control-C and Control-V, and then you can move that group around if you want. So if you've got clusters of 5 all over the place, or let's say that you had clusters of 5, let's say for whatever, it's a tower that has multiple lobbies and they have clusters of 5 in several lobbies. So you could select all of those then, and Control-C, Control-V, and have multiple different clusters moving and set those up, and it'll automatically, of course, change the numbers for you and everything like that. So there's a lot of shortcuts that can save you a lot of time when you're building your layout in P3. And the last wizard we'll go through is the video input wizard. And if you've got a 300, this can help you in many ways to efficiently and quickly set up your video source coming in. P3 PC has one option that's not available on your 300, 150, 50, and 300, and that's for the screen capture, which we'll show off in a little bit. The reason why, obviously, on the PC version, this hardware is not available, but then also on the 50 and 150, because those are just controller boxes. They don't hold any content or anything like that. There wouldn't be any reason to have screen capture on that. You wouldn't want to, show off the interface to P3 necessarily for a concert or something like that. So we're going to select screen, and then I'm going to hit next. And then it's going to ask me what scale that I want, and I'm going to hit, you can either have it scaled to fit, you can have it scaled, maintain the aspect ratio, or you can have no scaling. I'm going to hit scale to fit, and next. And then it's going to ask me if I want to save this as a preset. I'm going to save this as presentation 1. And it's going to ask me what slot number, and the fade time. I'm going to hit finish. And now when I go to video input, all those options are saved as this preset here. Now I don't like this preset for whatever reason, so I'm going to switch it back to DVI. And then let's say I want DVI at 800 by 600, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit here so that we can better. Let's say for whatever reason I wanted my video viewport to be, my video offset to be here, and the video content that I wanted coming in from the DVI signal, I want it to be offset by 100. So let's say that for whatever reason, I want to save that. I can right-click here and press record, and it'll give me a few different options. You can, of course, name the preset. You can have the fade time from snap to however many seconds you want, up to 10. I'm going to leave that down to snap. Okay. And then mask over here. So what the mask is, it's telling the P3 software what am I listening to as far as what this preset's going to have. It can be global screen settings as far as your brightness, color temperature, things like that. Your video input configuration, your setup fixtures, and your device settings. So the setup fixtures can be even the XY positioning of your fixtures in your layout, and your device settings as well for say color temperature correction or thermal throttling, things like that. So I'm going to save this as presentation 2. Spell it correctly. I'm going to hit OK. And now either I can just select these at any time from within the P3 software. These are also recallable, via DMX as well. And you can also change them if you want, and then you can lock them if you want as well. I'm going to put my fixtures on, and I'm going to show the difference here between why you might want to have fixtures in different spots. So let's say I have all my fixtures up here, and now my video input is going to be screen. I'm going to let my screen be over there, and I'm actually going to zoom this down a little bit. And I want to see my fixtures. So let me go back to setup here. I'm going to move these up a little bit. And I kind of like where they are. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to hit record. And I'm going to mark this as presentation 3. And I'm going to say I want this to include screen settings, device settings, setup fixtures, everything. And I'm going to hit OK. Now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to move these over. Let's say for one queue, I want them to be in a different spot or pick up a different part of the video content. Let's say that I've got a media server that has multiple layers going. And one layer is one piece of content and one layer is another piece of content. And for whatever reason, I'm doing this on my P3. So now I'm going to record this presentation 4. And I'm going to select everything again. And so now it's going to save where those fixtures are over there, on the other side of my workspace. So if I hit 3, they moved over there. If I hit 4, they moved to the other side. And so that can be useful as well if, let's say that you're kind of juggling around mapping to some different video sources, or if you even have multiple different inputs on a P3-300, where you want that P3 to map from. A few other things over here too. You can you can save what part of the video signal that's coming in. And where was I going with that there? Okay. One other small caveat, if you are working with the PC version, if I go over here and let's say that I hit show viewport, if you see this yellow box with a grayed out in there, because P3 PC is actually picking up what you see on the screen. After you're done kind of making sure that you are picking up mapping on your fixtures from where it is that you want them mapped, you're going to want to turn that viewport off, because as you can see that that's grayed out, it's actually dimming down a little bit the intensity within there. So you'll want to turn that off because it would dim down the intensity that's going to your fixtures. So now, because I have I have content playing here, let's actually get some media going. I'm gonna zoom this down a little bit. And over here, I'm going to zoom in. And we can see if we want to, we can leave this zoomed out and you can see everything that's playing, or we can zoom in. You can even set it so that you only see the fixtures, what might be playing on your fixtures at that time as well. But right now already we've got fixtures online configured, content playing on them. If I was, for whatever reason, doing a show or presentation with just 4 fixtures, I would be live and have content playing right now. So I'm going to stop that. Zoom back out. Okay. Let's see. A couple of things, if you are on a P3 box that you'll want to pay attention to. Zoom out. And that's going to be the resolution that's coming in, again, because P3, the 50 and the 150 are DVI only, and generally on the 300, most of what we see is DVI as well. The maximum resolution on DVI is going to be 1920 by 1080, and that's so that we can have 60 frames per second content playing out. You can also restrict EDID settings as well, if you wish, if you know exactly what refresh rate you have coming in and what resolution. You can also select the brightness if you want to boost it up, or if you want to bring it down. The contrast as well, you can change those settings, and the low light settings as well, if you're getting too much black light bleed through for whatever reason on the video signal. Let's see. If you are on the live tab, you'll notice that there is a log over here. And a lot of times, if there's something going on for whatever reason, you can see when fixtures are coming online here, if there are any errors, any commands that it might be receiving via DMX. You can see what that is. And sometimes, if for whatever reason, there might be a crash and it seems to be happening a lot, and if for no apparent reason, this log can be saved and to a USB drive and emailed to some of our product managers who can then go into the software and see what's going on. Also here, every time that there's a new version of P3, some fixtures might get an update. And the firmware for all fixtures is included with the P3 software. And so if you've got fixtures over here that have older firmware on there, right around here in red it'll say fixtures with incorrect firmware loaded. And you can click a button and it'll go through that firmware. You can also, if you want to, for whatever reason, if you want to reload the firmware on your fixture, you can do that from here. You can also set the firmware that you might want from within this software as well. If for whatever reason there was a new update and it was, for whatever reason, not doing something that you wanted it to do. That fixture to reboot and come back online. And see down here too, when it's got the power port selected, if you want to turn off these status LEDs, you can. The status LED has a few different functions. I'm on a power port 1500, and so with that power supply has an LED on the front that'll flash red or green. Solid green means that it's getting P3 signal and it's good to go. If it's flashing red, it means that it's booted up, but it's not getting any P3 signal. So that's a way that you can kind of at a glance see what's going on. But if you want to, you can also turn those LEDs off. Also, too, you can turn off outputs on the power port from here if you wish. And then you can also do factory resets on the power port from here as well. Let's see here. Well, I guess that's kind of about everything that I had as far as getting a basic installation up and running. Are there any questions? We can start tackling some of those.
Hey, Aaron, it's Laura. Nothing's coming through the chat yet.
Okay. Let's see. I guess we can go through some project settings as well. So let's say that we had a drawing of what an upcoming show might look like. You can actually import that as a background into your P3. So I'm going to go here to Project Options, and I'm going to choose an image. And now I have on here a drawing of one of our past road shows that I'm going to use. And in this, we can see that we had some Fatrons, which I don't have here, but we also had some Septrons as well. If you want to set an accurate scale, you can. So my scale is going to be 1,000 millimeters or a 1 meter fixture, because I know that that's what these are going to be over here. So to set the scale for how big this background is going to be within my workspace, I'm going to hold down Control, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to hit OK. Oh, not work. Let's try this again. Okay. Let's do 1,000. Okay. And we will Control click. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, wait. Background image. There we go. All right. So now when I draw a Septron on here, move this around. I know that the Septron that I draw on here, because that's 1 meter, be the same distance as what I drew when I imported the background. So when I get on site and I'm getting video input and from the video designer, the lighting designer, and that's playing, I know that the content that they have desired to be playing within this amount of space will match the length that pixel pitch of my Septrons. Also up here in Preferences, We can have a few other things. So let's say that we started off as pixels, but we wanted to change it to something else. Very easily from here we can. You can also, if you see these dots down here, that's your grid. You can change the spacing from 25 to something smaller if you wish. Your rotation shortcuts, so let's say that we had some fixtures, and I'm going to drag this Sceptron over here on. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to hit R. Oops. I just have a crash. Interesting. Like I said, this is beta software that we're using, so that might be, they're still working on it, obviously. So let's try that again. So let's rotate that fixture. Yeah, it must have just been a random crash. When I rotate that fixture, you can see that when I press R, rather, it rotates the fixture. If you want to know what orientation that fixture is in, there's a little black dot up here, and I know I might be getting into a little bit what Brandon was going to talk about, but sorry, Brandon. But that little black dot there will tell you the beginning of that fixture. So right now, the first pixel is at the top, but if I hit R twice, it's going to be at the bottom. But you can also set that right here, how much you want it to rotate. If you want it to be 90 degrees, or if you want it to be, let's say 10 degrees. And then if you hit Control-Shift-R, you'll rotate backwards. You can select that to be whatever angle you wish as well. If you remember earlier that when I had a Sceptron and I was kind of lining them up, it's step 2 like that. If you want to turn that off, you can. And then you can also, Brandon will kind of get into dots later, but you can choose whether or not to display some of that dot information. If you've got a project up and running, and let's say that you're moving it to a different computer, you can always reselect whatever network interface cards that you're using. And then you can also enable keyboard preset shortcuts as well if you want to use the function keys to call up any preset that you might have saved. Earlier we spoke about real world versus one-to-one. So let's do a new project and kind of show what that looks like. So I'm going to create a new configuration. This is going to be presentation 2. And I'm going to choose one-to-one this time. And I'm going to leave that the same. In one-to-one, the only possible unit of measurement that you can select is pixels, because it is working in 1 pixel of incoming content to 1 pixel of mapped content. I'm going to hit finish. And it's discovering my devices. And I'm going to zoom in. And now these 2 fixtures here, this Sceptron 10100, which is a 1 meter Sceptron that has 100 pixels, and this Sceptron 20, 1 by 50, is a 1 meter fixture that has 50 pixels. So the 10, when I drag this guy on, it looks just about the same as it did when we were in real world. But when I drag the 50 on, it's only half as long because it only has half as many pixels. So even though in the physical real world space, they are the same size. So whether you want to work in real world or one-to-one very much determines, is based on your preference and the type of installation that you're doing and the kind of content that you're mapping. So in real world, if I go back to my original file, and I had this set as a 10 mil pixel pitch project, and I was in real world mode where these 2 were the same length, the P3 would essentially just not map every pixel that was in between on the 50, so it only mapped every other pixel, versus on a 10 mil pixel pitch product, and I have a 10 mil product, every next pixel on a 10 mil project is going to be mapped to the next pixel on the subtron. So that's kind of showing off the difference there. A lot of times where I see one-to-one used is especially on some more artistic architectural installations, but there's no reason why it has to be one way or the other. It really is just based on designer preference and the kind of content that you're mapping. Some of the other things that you can also do here is you can change the intensity on individual fixtures. Let's say for whatever reason you were cross-renting and you had some fixtures that were on a festival or left outside for a really long time, or if you had two different kinds of lenses. Let's say that you had some with a white lens and some with a smoked lens, but you wanted them to match. Well, a smoked lens, because it's kind of a darker front, is going to be in the way, so to speak, of some of the intensity that's coming from the LEDs. So on the white lens fixtures, you may want to bring the intensity down a little bit just so that they kind of match to the eye. You can also as well change the color correction as well. Let's say that you had some subtrons, and maybe they were getting the same, the P3 was getting the same video content as some other products that are out there, or even just like a TV panel or something like that, but you want the colors to match. You could adjust the color correction in the P3 to kind of match some of the other hardware that an audience might be seeing. So that's a little bit more about that stuff. If you want to get really into the nitty-gritty of the XY positioning of things, you can. If you want to set, or rotation down here, you can. Let's say we want it for 37 degrees, and you can do that. And that's really about it for the basics. I guess back to you, Laura. Are there any questions yet?
I do have a few questions.
Okay.
All right, the first one is, if there isn't a fixture in the library that one is working with, can you download and upload to the software, or would it pick it up auto?
Can you say that first part again?
Sure. If there isn't a fixture in the library that one is working with, can you download and upload to the software, or would it pick it up auto?
Okay, yeah. So you can upload newer Martin P3 fixtures into older software. If you go into fixture and firmware library, you can also from a USB drive upload. Let's say it's a brand new fixture that we just haven't gotten around to updating P3 for. You can import that into an older version of P3 and work with it on your installation. It's just that, for instance, like when we came out with the Mac Allure a little over a year ago, we needed to be able to demo that product, and the P3 software wasn't quite ready for that yet. So we were able to map to that fixture, but there were certain abilities within P3 that didn't exist because those were for a new version of P3, but you could still at least do some basic mapping stuff. So something like that you could do.
Okay, the next question, is there a way to change the workspace size in an existing project?
As in like the active workspace here? Well, the answer to that is yes. You can change that. If you want it to be 1920 by 1080, it's as simple as changing your resolution on the video input tab. The maximum workspace, no matter what, in all versions of P3 is 1920 by 1080, and that's just a limitation of DVI being able to do 60 frames per second.
Okay, the next question, can you output offline to a pre-viz software?
Output on, I'll have to get back to them on that. I'm not sure exactly. That's a question I'll have to ask the product manager as far as what kind of capabilities there are with that.
Okay, there's another question. Can I use non-Martin fixtures on the software?
Not at this time. I don't know if that will ever be a possibility, but right now P3 only works with Martin P3 fixtures.
Okay, that's all we have at the moment.
Okay. So I will stop sharing. Thank you, everybody. And of course, if there are any more questions, let Laura know. And I think it's Brandon's turn.
Okay.
I gotta pass the ball. Yes.
All right, give me 1 second here. You should be seeing my P3, correct? Aaron, you got
Yep.
got it. Okay. Give me 1 minute here to get a few things open back up. So, real quick, as one of the first things I want to point out, so Aaron mentioned about if you have fixtures that have the wrong firmware, it'll show it. So right here is that spot there, the devices with incorrect firmware detected. Aaron, can you see my screen? Can you hear me?
Yep, you're all good.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so right here is that the devices with incorrect firmware detected. So if I click on this box, update all devices, it's going to give me a list of all the fixtures that are in my system, what their current version is, and then also what their target version is. If I were to hit reload here, it's going to go through and update software in every one of these fixtures one by one. A quick note is if you have a large system, you may have to do this a couple of times. I have seen it get through a portion of the fixtures and you'll start seeing it say failed. What it is that it updates the software in the fixture, and then after a period of time that fixture will reset. When a fixture resets, we can't communicate with the fixtures after it, and that's why you'll see that. Once it's done, the box will close. You'll still see this up here. You just hit update all devices again, and then the fixture that took the firmware will be gone. It'll only be the fixture that still needs firmware. Another quick note in the fixture firmware library, in this section here, the current fixture firmware, this is where I can go ahead and set that. So like video face series, if I come in here, that's a bad one to pick. Let's see, where is Fatron? This is all the current firmwares that are on my P3 controller. So I could always go back and set that to an earlier version or a later version. This is where you would set what version you want the system to be working at. In this case, I'm not going to worry about updating the fixtures. Everything's going to work fine for what I'm doing, so that little message is going to be there, but it's nothing to worry about. The main things I want to go over today is a couple of specific fixtures that are mapped a little bit differently, as well as showing you some more tools to use in the Setup tab and some features that we have coming in 5.2. We'll also talk about DMX, and then towards the end, we'll talk about thermal throttling. So the first fixture I want to take a look at is this fixture here, the VC.9. So the VC dot range comes in 3 different versions, either a 1, a 4, or a 9. In the 9, you have 9 pixels per node. The 4, you have 4 pixels per node, and the 1, you have 1 pixel or 1 LED per node. Each node is controlled all as one. So in this case, all 9 LEDs is going to be the same color. They're not going to be individually controlled, so you'll have the same information on all of those. But it's a larger pixel, and you're going to have higher brightness because of that. So when we're working with the VC dots, since these are on a wire, it's a flexible string, that brings into play some other options. So I'm going to start with the VC.9, and I'm going to go ahead and put this at fixture 201. Now, as Aaron already mentioned, these numbers don't matter. This is just the way that I've mapped it, so that way it matches the fixture that I'm working with. So when I click in my layout, this box pops up here. Now, the first thing it's going to ask me is what orientation do I want? I'm going to go ahead and stick with left to right for now, and then it asks how many pixels are on the string. Now, VC.9, a standard string, has 36 dots. Today, I'm going to go ahead and work with 10. The next thing it asks is what's the pixel spacing. So standard on a VC.9 string is 400 millimeters, and that's what I'm going to go ahead and work with today. So we'll go ahead and click OK. And you can see now it's dropped this string of dots in one straight line. Now, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in some here. If I grab that, I can move the entire string around. If I want to move just a single dot, what I'll do is double click on the dot that I want to move. You can see it's now highlighted in green. And if I move that, it's going to move just that dot. Now you see this line here that's connecting it to the dot before it? That's 400 millimeters. That's that distance that I'd set. I can always come closer than that, but the software will not let me go past that. So you need to make sure that when you add the dot in, the string in, that you set that spacing to the spacing that's physically on the string that you have. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a little design here. Now, if I don't want to move all these dots after it, say I just want to move this one but leave these where they're at. If I right-click, I can check this box here, move following pixels. Now, when I move it, one second here. So now when I move it, I can move just that pixel. And the reason why it was kind of jumping around there on me was the way it was doing the math based on the 400 millimeters from this dot and the 400 millimeters from this dot. So there I have the layout of the string physically the way I want it. But say this portion of the string is in one area and this portion of the string is in another area, but I don't want to see anything on these particular dots. So if I select that dot and then right-click, I can disable that dot. And you can see now that it's turned black, and I'll do the same thing on this one. By disabling those dots, it's not going to show any information on that. So these pixels will be showing video, and these pixels will be showing video, but these two would be black. Just an easy way to use a string for two different areas, but be able to black certain pixels out. Now, say I did this layout, but it's actually mapped completely backwards. If I right-click, I can come down here and flip the string horizontally. And I can also do that vertically as well. So you have both options there. So it's a quick way just to swap the way you have it laid out. Another thing that we can do is say I have, I'm going to add another string in here. Say I have a large layout and I have all of my strings mapped in this same layout. If I right-click on this string, I can come in here to copy layout, select my next string, and then paste it. Now, both of those strings have the exact same layout, so it's a quick way to get everything across it. Another situation you may have is if you're doing sort of like a low-res video curtain with dots. Typically with that, you're going to start in one location and then go either horizontally or vertically, step down and go back sort of in a zigzag pattern. When I drop in a VC dot, right here under the orientation, it asks me, I have a few different options. I'm going to go ahead and go up to 20 pixels on this one. If I choose snake, I get some more options. So the first thing is my start position, top left. That's going to be where the very first pixel is. The start direction is, am I going to go vertically first or horizontally? Horizontal pixel count, I'm going to go ahead and go 5 pixels with a spacing of 100 millimeters. We'll go vertically 1 pixel with a spacing of 200 millimeters. When I click OK, you can see it's dropped that in and it's all set up in that sort of orientation for me. So it's a quick way for doing some of those basic layouts that you come into quite often. So that is VC dots. I'm going to go ahead and move these down out of the way. The next fixture that I want to talk about is the VC strips. So in this case, I'm looking at the VC strip 25. So it's a 25 millimeter pixel pitch. This is actually just a raw PCB with the pixels on it, so it's not IP rated. This is meant to be built into set pieces, built into your building, so either an architectural piece or it's something that, but it's a much lower cost fixture because of that. We sell it in 2 lengths, either the short version or the long version, and I say it that way because there is different pixel pitches. In this case, the short version is an 8 pixel wide, and the long version is a 16 pixel wide. But you can cut it at different positions. You can see the line here, and on the back, it's actually marked cut here. So in this case, every 2 pixels, I can cut the fixture. So that again brings some things to look at when we start looking into our library here. So let me find VC strip. I'm going to start these ones at fixture number 301. So right here I have a VC strip 25 RGB 8x1, and that's the short fixture. And then I have a VC strip 25 RGB 16x1, and that's the long fixture. Anything else besides either the short or the long is going to be a custom fixture. You're actually physically going to cut the fixture itself to make it custom length for what you're doing. So in that case, I want to use this fixture right here, VC strip 25 RGB custom. Now when I select that, it's going to ask me how wide is this fixture. So I'm going to go ahead and go with 10 wide here. So I've cut almost all the pixels off and made this just a little bit longer. Now, if I had an install where I was going to be using a lot of these, or I knew I wanted to come back to this a lot, I could check this box to add it to my library, and it would now be a fixture here that I could get to quickly. I'm not going to worry about that today, but it is an option. So we'll go ahead and add one of those in. And I'm going to add in a few more here just to show all the different lengths. So we have one at a 10, a 12, and one more at a 14. That's all the different lengths. It's a little hard to see because they're all kind of scattered, but so here's one of the options or features that we're coming up with in 5.2. I select all these fixtures, right-click on them. I have this option here to align. I could also use the hotkey A. When I align, it's going to ask me how do I want to align them. So I want to do horizontal, and now I can select how to justify them, either center, right, or left justified. Now they're all lined up perfectly on the left-hand side. The next thing is we can do spread. If I go to spread vertical, it's now evenly spaced those, and I can also type in here that I want all of them to be 200 pixels apart. So that's a quick way to line up your fixtures and get them set up in the exact orientation you want without having to try to come in here and get this perfect by hand. That's definitely a feature a lot of people have been asking for. So when we start looking at these custom fixtures, both VC strips and VC dots, there's a few ways that's reported. So in the case of a VC strip, if I come over here and select the fixture itself, down here at the bottom you can see this length feature. I cannot change this. This is actually being reported from the fixture. So when I cut those pixels off, the fixture itself knows that and it reports it back to P3 to the P3 controller. It will not let me map a 14-pixel VC strip to an 8-pixel strip in my layout. So if I have this in my layout at 8, and I were to try to set that fixture to 301 with 14 pixels, it's not going to actually map it. This is going to stay orange, and that fixture is going to stay down here under Discovered Devices. So that's one thing to watch out for. In the case of VC dots, those don't report their length back to the system automatically. So if you were to cut 20 dots off of a string, what you would actually have to do is come here to pixel quantity, and you can see on this one, I can actually adjust this number. So you actually have to tell the VC dot string how many dots are on it. So in this case, I went in and told this particular VC dot string it only has 10 dots. And again, just like before, where this string had 20 dots and this string had 10 dots, it will not let me map a fixture to the incorrect type. So just keep that in mind. That also comes into play if you do direct DMX control of VC dots. If the VC dot string thinks that it only has 10 pixels, but it actually has 36 pixels, when I start sending DMX information to it, only the first 10 pixels are actually going to respond. So definitely keep that in mind when you're working with VC dots. Those are a little bit different than a lot of our other fixtures. Move these out of the way here, and then we'll start looking at some more features. Now, Aaron did mention using Control Scroll to zoom in and out. The scroll wheel by itself will move you up and down, and then Shift Scroll will also move you left to right. So the next fixture I'm going to add in, I'm going to work with some Fatrons, and I want to start at fixture number 1. And I'm going to go ahead and do multi-add. We're going to add in some Fatrons to work with. So I'm going to add in 6 Fatrons here to make sort of like a diamond shape. And I'm going to add in another 4 fixtures over here that we'll come back to a little bit later. So Aaron mentioned about rotation. If I do the R key, it's going to rotate it at 90 degrees. If I do Shift R, it'll do 45 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and get these lined up. Now that one, I rotated a few extra times because I want to make sure that the pixel number 1 are all in the same orientation on these fixtures. Because that way, when I do my pixel mapping, it'll actually go across the fixtures properly, and I won't have it going across this fixture, then going across this fixture and looking odd. Also make sure that when I do my cabling, everything is going to cable a lot easier. Because by doing this, I know that the output of this fixture is matched up to the input of this fixture, so my cabling can go right through. I'm going to go ahead and finish this here. We'll rotate this 145. And as Aaron mentioned, if I wanted anything other than 45 and 90 degrees, I could go into preferences and change those values there. So now I've got sort of my diamond or I shape, however you want to call it. So I'm going to go ahead and group these fixtures. So right-click on the fixtures, hit Group. Now there's a few reasons why we want to group fixtures. So first off, now when I move it, if I grab this group, it's going to move all those fixtures together. It's not going to move just one particular fixture, so it makes it easier to work with it that way. I can label the group, which I'm going to go ahead and label this one Lobby. And the names that I'm using here will come into play when we start talking about thermal throttling. If I select that group down here, I can rotate the entire group. So if I set this to 90 degrees, I've now taken that entire group in that orientation and just rotated it. The other thing is, say I had a bunch of pods in my layout and they were all the same exact system, I could highlight this group, Control-C, Control-V, and paste more copies of that group on there. So it makes it a little easier for moving things around. I can also lock this group. Now I cannot move it. I can't make any changes to it, so that group is locked. You can do the same thing on a fixture as well. You do not have to group to lock. Like so, if I didn't want this fixture to ever move or anything to change, same thing, just right-click and then lock that fixture. I'm going to go ahead and unlock this group. If I have this group set up, but this particular fixture is in the wrong position, the same thing as like we did on the strings. If I double-click on that, now I can move just that one fixture. So that's the main things I wanted to show in the Setup tab. The next thing I want to talk about is DMX. So right up here at the top, we have the DMX in Motion tab. There's a lot of different ways that we can do DMX control in P3. The first one I'm going to show you is the way it's currently working in version 5.1. And then after that, we'll talk about some features that are coming in 5.2. Currently, the way the system works with standard fixtures like Fatron, Septron, Botron, is what we call DMX overrides, and that is it's an override to video only. So the way it's going to work when we're patching any DMX is we always select what we want to patch first, hit Add Controls, and then tell it how we want to patch it. So in this case, I'm going to start with the processor itself and hit Add Controls. It brings up this box and it asks what mode do I want to patch it in. Now with the fixture, the system itself, there's only one mode that we can patch it, and that's P3 Global Control. With the fixtures, there's multiple modes that we can use. It's showing me right here that this is going to be a 4-channel fixture. Channel 1 is going to be freeze, blackout, and then test patterns. Channel 2 will allow me to recall presets. And then channels 3 and 4 is going to give me 16-bit control of color temperature. I'll go ahead and click Next. Now it asks how I want to patch it. If I was on an actual processor, I could use the 5-pin DMX. Typically, though, most of the time I'm using ArtNet. So I'm going to select ArtNet. I'm going to go ahead and go with Universe 1 and start address 1. Click Next, and then Create Controls. It's now dropped this into my patch. I can see ArtNet, Universe 1, address 1. It's 4 channels, so the last used channel is channel number 4. If I hover over the mode, it's going to pop up a little tooltip and tell me what that channel layout is again. So if I had forgotten or if I need to double check, I can always come back in here and check that. We had grouped those 6 Fatrons in our layout. So right now you can see the group here. I could grab this group and add controls to the group itself. If I know all those 6 fixtures I always want to respond exactly the same, then I could put my controls onto the group. I don't particularly want that. I like individual controls, so I'm going to select the fixtures inside of that. And all I did was drop this down, and now I've highlighted those fixtures, and I'll go to Add Controls. So again, it's going to ask me what mode I want to run it in. Now, these first three modes are the modes that you currently have in 5.1. These two down here we'll talk about a little later, but these are the ones that are coming in 5.2. So the first mode is P3 segment intensity, which is just a single 8-bit intensity channel. So all you'll be able to do is control the intensity. The color information will always be coming from video. The next up is a segment RGB. In this case, I have red, green, and blue, so I have 3 channels to control. I don't have control directly of the intensity, but when the video is playing, I can override that video as a fixture on a whole and adjust the color coming out of that particular fixture. The next one down is P3 segment basic. This is a 5-channel fixture. I have 16-bit intensity and then RGB control. And this is typically the mode that I use when I'm setting up a system because it gives me that fine intensity control as opposed to doing a virtual dimmer channel on my console. When you do that, it's going to be fading these 3 channels, so it's only going to be 8-bit as opposed to, in this case, it's 16-bit and it's actually done at the fixture, so you're going to get much better dimmer control using the 16-bit capabilities of the system. If I go ahead and click next, now I have this option whether I want to do consecutive channels or same channel. Now again, if I wanted all 6 of these to be controlled exactly the same always, I could put them all on the same channel. That's not what I want. I want to do consecutive, so it's going to patch one after the next. I'll go ahead and click next. I want to put these on ArtNet, Universe 1. Now, it's already set my start address to the first available, but if I wasn't sure, again, I could look up here. The last used address was address number 4, so the next one's going to be address 5. I'll go ahead and click next, and then create controls. So now I have everything mapped. Now, real quick, I want to jump over and show you on MA real quick. When I mapped these fixtures, I did not map these as, when I patched these in MA, I did not patch them as a Fatron or Skeptron. I patched these as a P3 segment. If I move this out here, you can see P3 segment control basic. That's a call I get quite often where people have tried to patch this as a Septron. When in MA or in your console, when you're mapping it or patching it as either a Septron or Fatron, that's when you're doing direct DMX control without a P3 processor. With the P3 processor in the middle of it, you're going to be using segment control or some of the options we'll talk about here in a few minutes. So now I have these fixtures mapped. If I go over to my video input tab and give me 1 second to get my content running. So these fixtures are actually being controlled via DMX. Now, DMX overrides are not visualized in this tab, so I cannot actually see what the fixtures are doing. The fact that these fixtures have video playing on them and they're not just black tells me that these fixtures are actually configured and receiving data, as opposed to something like this string here. If I were to move the video over that, you can see these are staying black. That's because these fixtures are actually offline. If I go look in the setup tab, this fixture will be orange. So I'll bring this back up here. So the ways that we can make sure we're actually receiving DMX into the system, the first one is actually going to be right here next to the system status. Mine is orange because some of the fixtures I have laid out are offline. Right next to that, there's this little ArtNet indicator. And right now it's green, and you can see it says ArtNet being received. That tells me I have ArtNet information coming into the system. If I go back to my DMX in Motion tab, I can also change my view mode here. If I change this to live values, you can see that right now I have my intensity set at 100%, and I have a little chase running on RGB. So I have information coming from my console. So that's another way to check and see what information is coming. And typically, if I get a call where something's doing something that they didn't want it to, I have them go check this, and they say, hey, all my fixtures are off. They come in here, and all these values are at 0. Well, that's because you're telling it to be off. Another thing that you can do is if you actually had these fixtures connected to your system and these fixtures were not responding. Now, when I call up test patterns, if DMX is coming in, DMX will override the test pattern. So if I were to call the device number test pattern, but I had the intensity or set at 0 for my console, the physical fixtures are not going to display anything. So right here is where you turn on the test patterns. On the other side of that, you have this one here that has the test pattern indicator. with DMX override. If I turn that one on instead, it overrides whatever DMX is coming from my console. So if the LD is over there doing who knows what, and I want to check my video system, I can always click this, and all the fixtures that are connected to my processor are going to now display that test pattern. One thing to keep in mind is it's not just going to override and do that for the fixtures that I have DMX control. It's for every fixture. So these strings and these strips down here, the ones that are actually connected, are displaying that test pattern as well. But that's a quick way to test the system. So what if I don't have any video? And this is actually a call we get quite often, where somebody hits set up their fixtures with a P3 system controller, and they don't have a video system coming in. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and select DVI. I don't have a DVI feed coming into my P3 PC. So you can see I have this black background. Well, in this case, I can fake video coming into these in order to get control of this. So if from my console, I call up the white test pattern, these fixtures now basically think they have white video playing through them. And at that point, my intensity controls and my RGB controls will work. And again, this is per fixture. I cannot break it down smaller than that. But that's a quick workaround if you happen to get into that situation. Now, I'm happy to tell you that in 5.2, this particular issue is going away because we've added a lot more ways that you can patch the fixtures, and so you won't have to worry about that once you get into 5.2. But that is the quick workaround. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to screen here and turn off my test pattern. Now I want to show you some of the features that are coming in 5.2. So I'm going to go back to patch. Another quick test, actually, before we move on, is right here. I have this button to disable all controls. So if I have DMX coming in and I disable it, the fixtures will quit responding to DMX. So that's another quick way to just turn off DMX and check the system to make sure it's responding to video. I'm going to go ahead and delete all controls. And it asks me if I want to because it's going to delete every single thing in my patch. And yes, I want to go ahead and delete that. I'm going to stick with these same 6 fixtures here. Go ahead and add controls for these. This time, I'm going to go to this option here, Pixel Map. Now, this would be if I had a large system and I wanted direct DMX control of the pixels, but I don't want to have to worry about having a whole bunch of DMX nodes and running lots of 5-pin cables. With 5.2, you'll be able to use a P3 PC, or I'm sorry, P3 controller or P3 PC to do that conversion for you. So I would bring ArtNet into the controller and then P3 out of that to the fixtures. Makes cabling a lot easier. So you can see, again, it's just a 3-channel RGB fixture. And then right here, I can pick the number of segments. So in the case of these Fatrons, this is a 4x50, so there's 200 pixels. So the highest number of segments I can break this up into is 200. That would give me individual control of every single pixel. That's a lot of control. I don't need that. I'm going to go ahead and do 20 for today. So when I go ahead and do next, I get these same options. I want individual control, so I'm going to do consecutive channels. Next, it asks me where I want to patch it. I'm going to do ArtNet Universe 2, start address 1. And then we'll go next again, and then create controls. Again, it's got everything mapped. If I go take a look at live values, you can see I've got everything at 100%. Currently, in the beta version, it does preview DMX. So right now, these fixtures are all set white from DMX. If I go to the next queue on my console here, you can see I've got a little RGB chase running, or the next queue here, I've got a blue and white chase running around the fixtures. So that's pixel mapping these fixtures through P3 from the console. If I bring MA up again here for a second, in this example, I'm using just a generic RGB 8-bit fixture. So this is not a fixture you have to worry about getting from us. It's just a generic RGB fixture, and now I've got pixel map control of that. We'll jump back over to P3. So that's for pixel mapping. Now, the other feature that we have here that we've added in 5.2, I'll go ahead and delete these again. I'll grab these same fixtures. I want to do add controls. The last option we have is this hybrid mode. So in this case, we have 16-bit intensity per fixture. We have this P3 switch channel per fixture, and then we have RGB for each segment. I'll go ahead and do 20 segments again. So next, consecutive channels. These ones I'm going to patch at universe 3, address 1. And then next, create controls. And again, you can see here, P3 segment hybrid, 20 segments. And I can see what the DMX layout is. I go back to my video input tab and go to my next queue. So these are being controlled in hybrid mode right now. Right now, I'm telling the fixtures to listen to DMX, and I've got this magenta color set from DMX. By using that P3 switch channel from my console, I can tell the fixtures to either listen to P3 or DMX. So now the fixtures are actually listening to P3. And this is on a queue by queue basis, and it's also on a per fixture basis. So if I go to the next queue here, you'll see half of my fixtures are listening to DMX, and the other half of my fixtures are listening to P3. Now, in the case of Fatron, Septron, and some of the older fixtures that we have, they're going to have this P3 switch channel. Newer fixtures like the Mac Allure, the Video Atomic Dot, and another fixture that we're actually announcing, I believe, in 2 days, they have what we call a P3 mix channel. The difference is, if this was an Allure, one of those fixtures, I could set this magenta color via DMX, and then using that mix channel, I can actually cross-fade between DMX and video. So these green stripes would actually be moving across this fixture over this magenta background, and that's an option you have on the newer fixtures. So talking about Allures, I do want to show some more options we have regarding DMX control that are a little bit definitely handy in certain situations. So I'm going to add an array of 12 of these real quick. You'll see here, this is one of those spots where that align and spread tool comes in very handy. So now I've added 12 fixtures. I'm going to go ahead and select all of those and spread them. I want to do 400 pixels vertically and 400 pixels horizontally. And I just quickly added in that array of fixtures. I'll move it down here to the middle. So that made that a lot easier than trying to place these one by one. Another feature I want to point out down here is scale and mirror. So on these fixtures, I can go ahead and scale them up. So when I have this set at 100%, this is actually the size of the LED engine that's in the fixture. But if I want them to get a little bit more separation between those pixels, I can scale it up. I can also mirror it, since the Allure is a pan and tilt fixture. Depending upon how you have it mounted, you may want to mirror those pixels. You can see it showing me this indication that it's mirrored. So it's just going to flip the video. That way it maps properly. So I'm going to go back over to my DMX tab and go ahead and delete these controls again. And then I'll grab these Allures. We'll do add controls. Now again here, the bottom two, these are specific to the Allure, and I have 2 different options. If I go with extended first, you can see this is a large fixture, takes 68 DMX channels. I have 16-bit color control for each pixel in the engine, as well as intensity, shutter, strobe, pan and tilt, and all that other information that has to pass through the P3. Go ahead and go to next, consecutive channels. I'll put these on universe 10. And then next, and create controls. If I actually had these fixtures connected, which in this case you can see since they're orange, I don't. If these were connected and these were green, when I did this and I actually went through and added the controls, it didn't just patch it on my P3 processor. It actually went out and told all these fixtures. So this fixture number 17, it set it into extended mode, ArtNet Universe 10, address 1. So it actually went out and patched the physical fixtures in my system from the software. Now, say we were in a festival situation and the next LED that comes in says, hey, you know what, I actually want to run those fixtures in basic mode instead of extended. That's the way I've done my, my show file. Not a problem at all. I can come in here and select all these fixtures, hit enter, and say, I want you all to be basic mode instead. It's actually gone out and told all these fixtures in the rig, so you know what, I don't want you in extended mode, now I want you in basic mode. So it's a real quick way to change the modes on the fixtures. It's actually a way to really manage the entire P3 system from one location. That is everything I wanted to talk about DMX. The next thing we're going to talk about is thermal throttling. So let me go in here to setup real quick, and I want to group these fixtures as well. I'm going to go ahead and call these window. So what I'm simulating here is a fixed installation where these particular fixtures are set up in my lobby, and these ones are in my window. I've grouped them to make them easier to control here. The other thing is these fixtures being in the window, these are going to be more directly exposed to sun and things like that. So these may be at a higher temperature. So when I go into thermal throttling, go right here to these gears, and at the bottom I go to thermal throttling. There's two different ways that I can do my system. I can do global throttling, or I can do group throttling. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on for global throttling first. Now, you can see, like in the case of Fatrons, the coldest Fatron in the system is currently 1 degree Celsius, and the current warmest is 55 degrees Celsius. Shutdown temperature is set from the fixture. You cannot change this. The next thing I have is thermal throttling starts. This is a value that I can set. So if I want thermal throttling to start at 65 degrees for the Fatrons, I can set that here. And what thermal throttling does is, if you've ever seen an installation where you have a large wall or a large number of fixtures, and certain fixtures may have overheated, and so one fixture's gone off or a few fixtures have gone off, and you get that sort of checkerboard look. Instead of getting that, what we're going to do is watch, and if any fixture starts getting too hot, we'll throttle the intensity of the entire system down to whatever limit I set here to try to keep from getting that checkerboard look. Now, if the fixtures get over 80 degrees Celsius, in the case of the Fatron, they're going to shut down to protect the fixture, because if it gets higher than that, it could cause damage. But within that range, I can go ahead and adjust that to keep the fixtures on. This last box here, the quantity to ignore, that says if I have 10 Fatrons in the system and I want to start thermal throttling, if any one of them overheats, I would leave this at 0. But if I wanted to wait until 3 fixtures are getting over this setting here, I could go ahead and tell it I wanted to ignore 2 fixtures. So if 2 fixtures get above 65, everything's going to stay at 100%. As soon as 3 fixtures start getting too hot, it'll start throttling. I'm going to go ahead and leave this at 0. Now, give me 1 second here. I'm going to grab one of these Fatrons and make it too hot. Now, it's going to take it a second here, and then this is going to change to show what the highest temperature that I currently have. So now you can see it's changed to this red color here. So a fixture is too hot, and it's throttling the entire system back. Every fixture in the system is now at 95%. And it'll keep going down to whatever the end level is here until that fixture comes out of that condition. So if I bring this back into OK, that's global throttling, and you may or may not want that. In my case, I've got these groups set up, and I have the system of the fixtures installed in 2 completely different locations, so I don't want that. I can do the same thing now with those groups instead. So in case of the lobby, if they get over 70 degrees, then I want to start throttling those. In the window, I want those to start throttling at 65 degrees, and I'll let those go completely to black, but the lobby, I don't want to go below 40%. I can turn on just a single group, or I can quickly turn on all the group throttling. Now, again, if a fixture gets too hot, 1 second here to update. So now this one is throttling. You can see the current intensity is at 67% on the window. If I go back to the lobby group, this one is still at 100% because it's doing it by group. So it won't affect the entire system, just whichever group I have selected. That is thermal throttling. I'll go ahead and quickly turn that off. That's the main things I wanted to go over. There is a few other resources I want to point out to you real quick. Let me bring this back up. So the first one here is our YouTube channel. So if you do a search for Harman Pro University, we have a lot of videos on there for all the Harman brands. In there is a list for Martin getting started with P3 with lots of videos, and you can see these are all relatively short videos that talk about all these different features. And when we release 5.2, there will be more videos added to go over those new features that I showed you here today. Another resource is the Martin P3 and LED video user group on Facebook. You'll see whenever you see something posted from Martin P3, that's usually Wouter. The one is the guy responding to those, and he's on this all day, keeping an eye on this, as well as a few of us in the US as well. There's a lot of things that come on here, installations that are done or tips and things like that. So it's another great place to look for notes, or if you have a question, you can throw a question on there, and usually one of us will get back to you pretty quick. With P3 PC, if you go to martin.com, you can get to the P3 PC controller page. Down towards the bottom of the screen, you can download the P3 PC software. It is completely free. In addition to that, there is a content package that we released. These are some basic content files, a lot of like grayscale content lines and things like that look really good on pixel mapping. Yeah, so that's really what I had to go over today. Is there any questions?
Hey, Brandon, there are a few questions. The first one, when moving fixtures around, can they snap to the grid spacing that you set in the preferences?
So some of the fixtures already do. So like in the case of these VC dots, there is, maybe I have to grab a single dot. You can do snapped pixel placement. And it'll snap, I think it actually snaps to the fixture next to that. As far as snapping directly to the grid, I don't believe that's the case yet, but that's one of the things we'll definitely throw back to the PMs and see if that's something that they can add, or we can get an answer on that.
Okay, the next question, is it just ArtNet we can use, or will it take SACN instead?
I believe at the moment it is only ArtNet, but we are planning on adding SACN. Another thing actually that I forgot to mention is, since we're adding these capabilities to PixelMap, we are going to increase the number of universes that P3 can respond to. So currently, the limit we're looking at is 128 universes of DMX coming in. We're hoping to go past that in some situations, but at a minimum, we want to be able to give you at least 128 universes.
Okay, the next question, can you set up multiple processors in a primary backup type situation for show critical applications?
Yes, you can. On the back of the P3 processor, give me 1 second to go to a controller so we can show you that real quick. So we'll grab a P3 150. So right here on the P3 150 or 50, you have your DVI in. Right next to that, you have a DVI through. If you want to set these up in a primary backup situation, you would loop your video to the secondary, to your backup processor, or if you wanted to, you could use a splitter and split the video to each one. This is a true DVI through, though, so you could do it this way. You would take the P3 out and run those into a switch, and then from there, go out to your fixtures. And then at the beginning of the day, when you boot the system up, you boot up your primary processor first, wait a couple of minutes for it to find the system until everything's gone green, and then you boot up your backup processor. When it boots up, it'll look at the P3 network, it'll see that everything's already communicating with the master, and then it'll just sit there and monitor the master. If the master goes down, the backup will automatically take control of the system, all the fixtures will switch over, and you'll keep going. Typically, it's a second or two for that switchover to happen. In a fixed installation, I always recommend using like a boot controller or a power controller to boot your main processor first in the case of like a power outage, and then delay the boot up of the backup for a couple of minutes. But in that, you can set it up in a backup situation.
Okay, the next question is asking if you can summarize the new features coming in version 5.2.
So a lot of the features that that I was showing you, like these the align and spread, those are coming in 5.2. The other options that we had here when we were doing DMX, the hybrid mode and pixel map mode, those are coming in 5.2. As well as on my setup tab, I can actually bring my video input to my setup tab now as well. So if I have my P3, I have my P3 connected to a media server and I'm trying to lay the fixtures out, I can actually look at the video content coming in and make sure that's done. I can also do the background image or blank as well. On the video input tab, some more options here as well. If I had a background image set, I could display my background image with the video overlaid over that, again, so I can see the way it's mapping to my rig. Those are the main features that we're looking at in 5.2 at the moment.
Okay, the next question is asking, does P3 support NDI input?
We've talked about it as an input. I don't believe we don't do it yet, but it's something we're talking about. I don't know what the final decision on that's going to be, but we are talking about it.
Okay, next question, how do you do video motion in a fixed installation?
Video motion? I'm not sure I understand the question on that one.
They didn't provide further clarification. So we can move on to the next question. Maybe they can write into you. For backup processors, you have to load the same show file on both processors, correct?
Correct. You want to have the same show file loaded on both because while we said that these numbers are basically arbitrary, that is the way the layout is mapped. So if you had two different show files with this position having two different numbers, when the backup took over, it's not going to map that physical fixture to that location.
The next question is asking, where do the sensor motions go?
Sensor motions?
Yes, that's all there was to the question.
Sorry, that's another one. If you could go ahead and type in some more information on that one, I can try to answer that, but I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Okay. Well, Brandon will be providing his contact information at the end, so if you want to shoot him an email, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer that.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. It looks like he asked a clarifying question. If there's a fixed installation using P3 system, then can we do motions in the video using sensor motion?
Using sensor motion. So I believe what you're referring to is like having sensors in the physical environment to cause the video to react to the things in the environment. If that is what you're referring to, then if P3 itself doesn't do that, what you would actually do is you would do that on the media server side, and then your media server would then send that video into the P3. So we can respond from sensors. I actually have quite a few installs that we've done, where there's touch sensors or proximity sensors, or as somebody's walking through a hallway, the lights will respond to that person's presence. But what that's done is the sensors are talking to the video server, generating that content live, and then sending it into a P3. The P3 is just taking whatever video content and then sending it out to the fixtures.
Okay, here's another question. Is there a way to export the map to give a pixel map to someone sending you video content?
Not that I'm aware of. It's typically done the other way. So on your video server side, if they figure out the map the other way, they're going to send the content to you, and then you would use that map here. That's why we have the ability to bring in like the background image and things like that. So you could import a map from them and then lay your fixtures out over that.
Is there any way to globally turn off the status LEDs on the back on the video panels? In dark rooms, the blinking status lights are noticeable, and they end up having to tape over every LED. So they're wondering if they can turn those off.
So as Aaron showed at the bottom here, that's where that status light would be able to be turned off. what you can do is select a group of fixtures. So if I select a group of fixtures, down in that box that will pop up on the bottom, let's see, I need to get to the serial number. So if you select the fixtures here, these settings will now apply to all of those fixtures. So if you were to select serial number for all those phase 5 fixtures, right down here in this box, you'd be able to turn that status LED off. So you can do it from the P3 just by selecting all those fixtures together before making that change.
Okay, next question. Are we going to get the segment mode control via P3, the same mode you can have via DMX, so you can use the internal macros, et cetera, via a desk?
Unfortunately, no. The way the system's laid out and the way we had to implement this, that's not possible to be able to call up the internal effects. So it will be, the hybrid mode will be the P3 switch and then DMX control, but we are able to give you pixel level control from DMX, but you won't be able to get the internal macros.
Okay, the next question is asking, going back to exporting a pixel map, could you look at adding this as a feature? I work in a venue that is a fixed installation. We have a lot of incoming DJs every night, so it would be good to tell them how we have mapped it before they turn up.
I just made a note of that, and once we're done here, I will definitely get an email over to the PMs and we'll get that conversation going.
Great, it looks like that's all that came in on my end, and I think we're probably at time. Were both of you all set, all done, Brandon and Aaron?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Just a reminder to everybody that this was recorded, and we will be sending this out in a few days. And you are welcome to contact either Brandon or Aaron if you have additional questions. Okay, thanks everybody for attending. We really appreciate your time.